Welcome to KI. Glad you could join us. For those of you that are regulars in our series, let us know what you think about we're branching out in our lunchtime options. Feedback is welcome. My name, for those of you who don't know me, is Nicole Finneman. I'm the Director of Research and Academic Affairs here at KEI. What that means is I cover all of our North Korea-related activities and also our academic outreach. It makes me the lucky custodian of our academic paper series, in which we submit or put out calls for papers twice a year, and we're looking for unique and timely policy-relevant topics related to the Korean Peninsula. We publish those papers roughly every month, along with a program like this, and then at the end of the year we compile them into a volume called On Korea. This is the first program since this last one has been published, so I encourage you all to please take a copy on your way out. Our topics cover both Koreas. We look for new and interesting topics to discuss. Today's paper couldn't be a better example of that, and we'll be sending out a call shortly, but just so you know, take one of these with you. You'll be the first to do so. I'm very happy to be introducing our speaker today, who's joining us from North Carolina. You've had an luckily unbumpy trip here this time. Dr. So's most recent trip to the area was in this last December. Dr. Jung Kun So is taking on a topic with an objective perspective that we appreciate and obviously you're all interested in. He will be talking to us today about co-sponsoring North Korea bills in the U.S. House of Representatives between 1993 and 2009. What tendencies he saw, what his logistical regression analysis has come up with. And then I am going to be opening up the floor to all of you for what I hope will be a discussion with questions and comments from you all about what this information might mean for us, what we can do with this, and if you read the invitation, the so what question. Before I hand it over to Dr. So, you all have his bio in front of you, so I don't need to tell you very much. I did just mention that he's joining us today from the University of North Carolina at Wilmington, where he's an assistant professor of political science. He holds a PhD and an MA in government from the University of Texas at Austin, and a BA in political science from Seoul National University. He often works on issues related to American political interests and the institutions that have been shaped by wars and trade since quite a while ago, actually, in the United States. And he has particularly examined how congressional members, as single-minded seekers of re-election, strategically respond to foreign policy issues in the context of party building and American political development. As we were just talking before this program, I said it's often the objective person that is the one most willing to take on such issues from the perspective of another country, for example. And with that, I can't tell you how pleased we are to have you here today, Dr. So. I'm going to hand the floor over to you for your presentation.
Please, could you?
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for your kind introduction and welcome, and thank you all for coming. I'm very pleased to be here at KEI to talk about my paper, which is addressing U.S. Congress and North Korea policymaking. This is a part of my larger project, trying to better understand how the United States Congress is using the co-sponsorship as a foreign policy tool in the post-Cold War era. Before I get started, I have to note one thing. Unlike most of the other papers you might have seen here at KEI, my paper I'm going to talk about today is not about South Korea. It's not about North Korea. This is about American politics with a focus on foreign policy toward North Korea. When I'm telling my students in North Korea, not North Korea, I mean, hopefully someday, when I'm telling my students in North Carolina that I do not know much about North Korea, they don't trust me. I mean, they don't believe me. I mean, they assume that I do know a lot about North Korea because I'm from South Korea, but that is not the truth. as you might all know, but they don't trust me in that regard. But what can I say? So, I mean, I was born in Korea. I grew up in Korea. I went to undergraduate programs in Korea, but trained in Austin, Texas. And now I'm teaching in North Carolina. Definitely, I consider myself as an outside observer of American politics. And I'm pretty sure that many of you have sort of home court advantage in understanding how Congress really works. So I'm very much looking forward to learning a lot from all of you during Q&A session. All right. Let me start with some big picture ideas of where this research has come from and where it stands in the large literature of Congress and American foreign policy. My principal research interests are party politics and electoral competition in American politics and its impacts on foreign policy making over time. But at the same time, I'm also interested in the impacts of foreign affairs and foreign policy on party building and electoral competition in American political history. So one natural question came up when I was thinking about how Congress is working toward the issue of North Korea. That is, I was curious whether the notion that the Republican Party is arguably strong and the Democratic Party is arguably weak on national security, whether that notion holds up on the issue of North Korea. I was very curious about that issue ownership type of analysis to see whether I can apply that political science theory to the study of North Korea policymaking in the United States Congress. Well, this idea of party ownership of national security should go back to the days of only Nixon could go to China in the early 1970s, as you all know. According to this theory of party reputation and public perception on the issues of national security, George McGovern, even if he were elected in 1972 election, he could not go to China. Right? The issue ownership theory is very interesting in the sense that, I mean, we can better understanding how party politics works out on the issue of North Korea. Sometimes this idea of party ownership could lead to some overreaction by political leaders to correct the reputation. For example, John Kerry, during the 2004 presidential election, he was allegedly more interested in an aggressive airstrike of nuclear facilities in Yongbyon than the incumbent President George W. Bush. Who knows? I mean, it could be just a campaign rhetoric or something else. Nobody knows. So I looked up some voting records on the issue of North Korea in the U.S. Congress to find out which party, the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, owns the issue of North Korea. Yet, interestingly enough, what I have ended up finding was basically no conflict of interest. There seems to be no variation whatsoever in terms of members of Congress' final voting behavior on the issue of North Korea. I mean, the North Korea issues are such as human rights abuses and nuclear power, nuclear proliferation issues. So members of Congress are allegedly, arguably very interested in those issues. But if you look at the final passage voting stage, I mean, the voting records are no conflicting interest at all. For example, one of the most well-known legislation over DPRK, the North Korean Human Rights Act of 2004, passed by Congress and signed by George W. Bush, was passed by Congress over voice votes. Members of Congress supporting this say aye, say nay. So basically, not only we don't know who was for and who was against over this very important issue, but also, think about this, also it's very hard to imagine any member of Congress standing up to say that I'm opposed to human rights promotions in North Korea. So when you teach political science 101, the first thing you have to mention is that politics is about conflicting interest. When there seems to be no conflicting interest or whatsoever on the final